Thank you all for sharing in the chat. It was wonderful to see all those names of people who have inspired us and all those different faith and wisdom traditions they come from. I wrote down a few names that weren't familiar to me to look up later. And the hymn that we just heard, it was recorded by the UU Church of Oakland, California, and it is in our UU hymnal. It's a Hindu devotional prayer, and it translates roughly to these words: "Come in our meditation, O God, reside in our eyes. Come into our dark hearts, arouse the supreme light. Flow the river of love in the hearts, O ocean of love. Teach us to live together in harmony. Let service be our creed. Let service be our action. Make us earnest servers whose service is ever honest." Before I went to India, I used to think of India as this spiritual Mecca, a land of ashrams and meditation retreats. Many of my revered spiritual teachers began their inner life journeys in India. I also used to think of a spiritual contemplative life as one that was quiet and still and slow paced. And then I went to India. And I didn't go to an ashram, but I did go to a little village many hours and mountainous roads away from anything. And I was in cities and towns and in some natural areas, and I'm pretty sure I never heard silence in all that time. My impression of India as a whole was constant motion, color, sound, and people. And also a land of gurus and gods and embodied presence. India, the birthplace of Hinduism, seems to me to set the stage for embracing paradox, both and. You may remember, if you were here last week, that the philosophy of Hinduism is not concerned, generally speaking, with making the world a better place. Hinduism's cosmology believes that the world's purpose is not to rival paradise, but to provide a training ground for the human spirit. Hindus believe the process of creation moves in cycles, and that each cycle has 4 great yagas, or epochs of time, and that the process of creation is cyclical and never ending. Hindu tradition holds that 3 of these great ages of this current universe have already passed, and we are now living in the 4th one, the Kali Yuga. This cosmology trusts the cycles of birth, sustenance, and death, trusts destruction and recreation. And there is also a cycle that each eternal soul goes through, and that karma says what you're going through, you created and your soul needs. So in Hinduism, there is a certain acceptance of the perfect unfolding of the universe and of each person. And that acceptance can be the ground for peace and allowing, a certain freedom from needing to change the world. This may be hard for our Unitarian Universalist hearts to accept. Working for justice, transforming the world, working to create a heaven on earth, these are bedrock tenets of our faith. And also in that vein of paradox, Hindus must also live their dharma, the moral imperative to do good, to take responsibility, to be just, to offer kindness. And so it is also a Hindu experience to work for justice where they see injustice. And that is my emphasis today. How an adherence to this faith tradition calls one to serve humanity through love. Before beginning to study Hinduism, I could not understand how this ancient religion, with all of its expansive and inclusive thought, could also include the caste system. Here's what I have learned. According to sacred Hindu texts, the caste system divides people into 4 main categories, originated from the god of creation, Brahma. The Brahmins are the priests and the teachers, the highest level of the caste, and they were created from Brahma's head. The Shustritas were the warriors and the rulers, and they were created from Brahma's arms. And the Vishus were the traders, created from his thighs. And the Shudras were the unskilled laborers, and they were made from Brahma's feet. Hindu philosophy indicates that these categories were based on abilities, not on birth, and that movement was not restricted between the castes, but one could move between them. Historians say that until the 18th century, the formal distinction of castes were of limited importance to Indians. Social identities were much more flexible, and people could move easily from one caste to another. The BBC reports that new research shows that hard boundaries between those castes were set by the British colonial rulers, who made caste India's defining social feature when they used censuses to create a single society with a common law that could be easily governed. The people below or outside the caste system, whom we have heard referred to as untouchables, were shunned for their occupations. Anything to do with dead animals, such as fishermen, working with leather, disposing of dead animals, also any manual scavenging, laundry, or sanitation work. In recent years, the untouchables have become a politically active group and have adopted for themselves the name Dalit, which means those who have been broken. It's spelled D-A-L-I-T. The government term for the Dalit is scheduled caste. And the Untouchability Offenses Act of 1955 provides penalties for preventing anyone from enjoying a wide variety of religious, occupational, and social rights on the grounds that he or she is from a scheduled caste. So it's illegal, but it still happens. While staying in Ahmedabad, our guide was Mahesh Upadhyay, who studied at Meadville Lombard Unitarian Universalist Seminary. He grew up in India in a mixed faith family. His father was Zoroastrian and his mother a Hindu. Mahesh works in Ahmedabad as a community-based social change organizer. One of the places that Mahesh took us while we were there visiting was to a village well beyond the city, to see for ourselves the strong adherence to the caste system, and at the same time, the work of an organization that is striving to make great changes in that unjust system. Our host in the village that day was the leader of the organization, who took over from his father, who was murdered for trying to make these changes. Our host had an office in a community building in the village where there were simple classrooms and a meeting space. This organization was offering education to the Dalit people, as well as job training and childcare. The Dalit people are being offered new opportunities here and a new message of respect and intrinsic worth. But not everyone was on board. Our host gave us a walking tour of the village, the most extreme poverty I have ever seen. We walked along the river and observed 3 wells, each well for a different caste of people. The Dalit's well was the farthest walk, but all were fed from the same source. And the women from each group used their well for collecting water for their families. At the well of the slightly higher caste, though still tradespeople, there were several women washing their clothes by hand. They began to talk to us, these white strangers, with much emphasis in their own language. We indicated that we couldn't understand, and so our host interpreted for us. The women told us we should not associate with the Dalit people, we would be polluted by them, dirtied. Meanwhile, one of these people they spoke of, our host, was translating to us their vile sentiments. But our host and his organization are committed to changing this culture and to helping people have a better life. His actions are inspired by his heartfelt belief in his Hindu faith and these words from the Bhagavad Gita. Every selfless act is born from Brahman, the eternal, the infinite. He is present in every act of service. So strive constantly to serve the welfare of the world. By devotion to the selfless work, one attains the supreme goal of life. Do your work with the welfare of others always in mind. I learned so much in India. On this trip with a group of pilgrims from this congregation, we had gone specifically to visit our partner church in the northeast of India, Unitarians from way back. But in the midst of all of that loud, chaotic tumultuousness, I found residing a quiet heart of peace and beingness. Maureen McNulty, one of the pilgrims who traveled to India, will share her reflections of another experience we had of justice and cooperation. She will be speaking right after this musical offering of the Sarvasham mantra. It's a devotional prayer from the Upanishads, and the translation means this: in gratitude for our health and well-being, in gratitude for inner peace, in gratitude for the fullness of heart, in gratitude for the auspiciousness in our lives, may all beings be happy. May all beings be free from illness. May all beings increase the good of others, and may no one suffer. So may it be.